All right, we are live. Welcome in to the Sports Illustrated Others Receiving Votes College Football Playoff Rankings Reaction Show. Fun times. It's the Other Receiving Votes. I'm Bryan Fischer. My partners in crime, Pat Forty and Gina Wojciechowski, are not here. One is teaching the youth of America all about these college football playoff rankings. The other is actually at a basketball game between Louisville and Kentucky, it is that time of year where we get that kind of crossover. But we are here to talk about the college football playoff, which right before we just went on air here, just released their top 25, and certainly some surprises, I think, up and down the ballot in terms of what the committee was able to do, which we will discuss now. And I think you can kind of start at certainly the bottom of those rankings. I think maybe the most notable thing for a lot of people out there, which group of five team was going to be included after Memphis lost this past week. It does look like that will be USF, which is certainly in the running there in the American. And I think easily the group of five favorite to make it to everything, at least make it to the playoff and likely line up as that number 12 seed moving forward. So it's going to be very interesting to see what else is in the bracket. But as we kind of look at now the show as well, I think everybody also has a lot of eyes on the ACC there, and what is going to be that pecking order for the ACC. And, just looking at the bracket as it stands, I think that was probably the most interesting thing, seeing Miami move up as much as they did. And I think if you went back to, obviously, the committee chairman, Mac Rhodes, last week, he talked about the Hurricanes quite a bit and what they had to do essentially to impress the committee. And everybody kind of understood that this was a team that was very talented, but there was a lack of consistency. And despite really running it up on Syracuse this past week, it seems like they are getting the attention of the committee. And if you pay attention to the bowl rankings there on SI.com, the bowl projections, excuse me, it looks like the Hurricanes are going to be right in the thick of things down the stretch. Now, obviously, they do have a game against Pitt to end of the year. But in terms of a lot of the things that they need to go right, I think this was a good step for them checking in there at number 15, not only the highest ranked ACC team, but one of the teams that you can definitely see making a run down the stretch and making it hard to keep them out with that win over Notre Dame. Some of the other wins that they were able to rack up, obviously the loss to Louisville doesn't look quite as good after the Cardinals loss to Cal this past week. And just looking a little bit at the bracket itself, and Miami, despite the more difficult path there to get to the ACC title game, they are kind of penciled in as the highest ranked ACC team. So although they are checking in at number 11 in the field, that's if you actually look at the bracket, which would be matched up against Texas Tech in one of their first round games, that's actually not the clearest path for Miami. They're going to almost have to get in at large based on a lot of those tiebreakers in the ACC. And I think that's the important thing to keep in mind moving forward is, a lot of these teams, whether it be Texas, whether it be obviously Ole Miss, these are teams that are probably on the outside looking in terms of actually getting that automatic qualifier and making it to the Big 12 or Big 10 or SEC or any of these championship games to actually get the automatic pick. They're going to have a certain cut line in terms of getting up to as high as they possibly can. But a lot to discuss. And as soon as these rankings are refreshed, I can actually read them off for you. If you haven't had a chance to see the full rankings reveal show or the actual bracket itself, we can start with number 25, Cincinnati, which has a big game in a couple weeks against BYU. Number 24, USF, again, is that highest ranked group of five team. Tennessee at number 23, again, one of the higher ranked 3-loss teams, actually not the highest ranked 3-loss team this week, which we'll get to. That's because they're sandwiched around Pitt at number 22 and number 21, Iowa, which only drops a spot. I think that was the one thing that a lot of people, especially in Big Ten territory, we're going to be paying attention to in terms of, all right, what does this mean in terms of that close loss to Oregon? Certainly coming down to the wire there in the fourth quarter, thrilling game there at Kinnick. That's a great news for the Ducks in particular to have another top 25 win. But again, the Hawkeyes are going to play at USC, so that's going to be a tough game for them to remain in the rankings. But obviously, USC plays Oregon down the road as well, so the Big Ten will certainly sort itself out. But good news for the Ducks, at least. They're going to have that respect for some of their wins, given that what's happened to Penn State, given what's happened to some of their other wins. They need those top 25 wins, especially if they want to host a first-round playoff game there in Autzen. Checking in at number 20, Louisville. Right behind them is right in front of them is Virginia at number 19. Obviously, those are the two ACC teams that were previously the two highest ranked teams in the conference, but they fall all the way down to 19 and 20. And really, both of them still have some shots to make it there to Charlotte to win the automatic qualifier as well. A lot more easier path, I think, for the Cavaliers to make it through, but a tough one this weekend against Duke. So it'll be interesting to see how they fall. Number 18 is Michigan. Number 17, the team that they lost to, USC. 16 is Georgia Tech, and then 15, as we were discussing, Miami. There is the highest ranked ACC team, and that's great news to move up for Miami if you're a Canes fan out there in terms of what they have to do. You probably got to get into the top 10 to get that at large bid. Certainly, they have a difficult task to actually make it to Charlotte. There are some scenarios for them to do that, but for the big thing for Miami, you want to move up in the top 10. And given some of the matchups out there, you got to figure out one of BYU or Utah are going to lose again, potentially, either down the stretch in the regular season with some of the tough games that they have, or in the Big 12 title game. So that probably knocks out some competition in front of you. Those are great. The Cougars are 12, and the Utes are 13. Right in front of them is Vanderbilt, which has to go on the road at the end of the year to Knoxville. We know that rivalry. That's going to be a difficult task for the Commodores. And then certainly, with number 11 Oklahoma at Alabama this weekend, and number 10 Texas at in Athens against Georgia. Those are going to be some difficult tasks as well. So if you're Miami, these are kind of the things you want to see if you want to try to get a break to get back into the playoff chase. And it certainly looks like Miami, if they can take advantage in these last couple of weeks, does have a pretty clear path if they can get some help in some of these other conferences. As I mentioned, number 10, Texas, number 9, Notre Dame, which is kind of right there on that cut line too for the Irish in terms of hosting that first round playoff game. Right now, they would be projected to go to Autzen and play number 8 Oregon, which would be a fascinating matchup, kind of an old versus new vibe against that one. That would be certainly a sight to behold in the first round if that ends up holding as is. Number 7, Ole Miss. Number 6, Texas Tech, which is the big riser. And I think one of the other kind of notable things about this top 25 is where were the Red Raiders going to be after that very impressive win over BYU? Well, it looks like they are moved up not only to the number 6 spot, but you got to think now if they can keep this rolling. And they've been blowing out opponents. Obviously, their lone loss was without starting quarterback Baron Morton at Arizona State. So the committee seems to say this is a pretty dominant team. And if they were to win the Big 12, you can maybe make the case for them to get that number 4 spot, and that number 4 seed would obviously send them to the Cotton Bowl instead of hosting a first-round playoff game. So maybe depending on if you're a Texas Tech fan, you might want to see how that shakes out. But could be good news for the Big 12 to maybe even earn one of those quarterfinal berths right away. If Texas Tech can not only keep winning, but winning in a dominant fashion, that maybe can allow them, especially Georgia struggles at some point down the stretch. They got to play Georgia Tech, remember, in that last game, and Mercedes-Benz as well, that they could possibly leapfrog the Bulldogs. I think that is now on the table if you're a Texas Tech fan. Number 5, Georgia. Number 4, Alabama. Number 3, Texas A&M. And number 2, Indiana, behind number 1, Ohio State. No changes in terms of that top 5 at all, which is probably the other thing that I think is going to be the debate in the committee room. Could you have seen Texas A&M go ahead of Indiana? I think you can certainly make the case in terms of the way that the Aggies are playing these last couple of weeks, combined with what Indiana has done and some of the less impressive wins. Obviously needed a incredible last-second escape there at Penn State. I think that was one of the things that a lot of people put a focus on going into these rankings, but certainly the dominance that the Hoosiers have shown, I think that probably won out in terms of that debate in the committee room. But it will be interesting to see where we go from here. Be sure to make sure to leave your comments either on social media or on our pages, wherever you are watching the streams. Happy to take some of the questions as well. Looking forward to doing that in just a little bit. But now that we've recapped the top 25, do want to look a little bit at some of the brackets and some of the projected matchups, at least on paper for this top 25 right now, which is going to be interesting. And obviously those top 4 seeds are all going to get buys. Indiana, Texas A&M, Ohio State, and Alabama. And then that would lead into a 5-12 matchup in Athens between South Florida and Georgia. I think that would actually be pretty interesting given what the Bulls have along both of the offensive defensive lines, Byron Brownham. Being able to move, I think that makes them a little bit more dangerous than your normal 12 seed. I think if you were Kirby Smart, you'd kind of be worried about facing a mobile quarterback like that. Obviously, Alex Golesh, he knows the SEC well. He's played Georgia quite a bit from his days there at Tennessee, so he might have some answers there, and could maybe pull. I don't want to say a shocker, but at least certainly push Georgia to an uncomfortable spot. Given the personnel and given how experienced that USF team is, as we'll probably see down the stretch here with these battles in the American to not only make it to the conference title, but to earn that group of 5 bid as well. I mentioned it earlier, Notre Dame at Oregon being another classic matchup. Miami at Texas Tech. They might dub that the NIL Bowl in terms of the first round matchup, and that would be something. If you love play in the trenches, I think that might be the game that everybody would focus in on in terms of Miami with that a great offensive lineman, Ruben Bain. I mean, I can definitely imagine pretty much every NFL franchise that has a top 10, top 15 pick making their way out to Lubbock to see Miami against Texas Tech if that were to wind up being a first round matchup game. And another fun one in terms of Texas going to the Grove and playing there in Oxford against Ole Miss as that final first round game. So a lot of teams kind of on the outside looking in. Obviously, Oklahoma would be the first team out. BYU would be the second team at large team that would be out there as well. I think you could make the case, though, certainly with Miami as the highest ranked ACC team right now, but they have the more difficult path, if you will, to actually make it to the ACC championship game and get that automatic bid. So going to be a very interesting time in these next couple of weeks, especially given some of the matchups we have, but excited to look at there. And I think looking at a couple of questions, I think there was certainly some interest in the committee around that group of 5 bid in terms of whether JMU and James Madison would be one of those teams that the committee would give some strong consideration. Obviously, they're not in their top 25 USF. Unlike Memphis last week, obviously Memphis was not in the committee's top 25, although they did indicate to ESPN that was their highest rate group of 5 team. And in this case, it is USF making it into the rankings over James Madison. I think there was also a lot of talk this past weekend in terms of, hey, could James Madison and the American champion end up leapfrogging over the ACC champion? If you wanted to see some crazy chaos scenarios in terms of, multiple loss Duke winning the league, that'd probably be the only way that you could probably see that happening in terms of 2 group of 5 champions leapfrogging over the ACC to actually make it into the playoffs and knock that league out. It seems like that, not seeing James Madison and not seeing the Dukes there into the top 25 for the committee probably is a little bit more far-fetched than we probably thought coming out of the weekend. Still not crazy to think about given some of the results, and especially if James Madison continues to roll there in the Sun Belt, especially if they could maybe meet Southern Miss as well. If Southern Miss were to win 10 games and maybe make it there to that Sun Belt title game, that could be a pretty interesting matchup for the committee to evaluate. But at least as we sit here right now, that might be a little bit tough in terms of what we might have to see. If you have any questions, do let me know, and be sure to drop them in the chat, whether you're on Facebook, whether you're on Instagram, whether you're on any of those. Happy to take any questions you guys might have if I can find some. But be sure to leave them in whatever stream or wherever you were watching. Happy to take them. I think there is going to be a little bit of a debate, and this is what Mac Rhodes, the committee chair, is talking about now, that kind of top 3 debate. Obviously, all those teams, whether you're talking about Ohio State, Indiana, or Texas A&M, they're all undefeated. Certainly, depending on your metric, you might consider, I know strength of record has kind of been the thing that a lot of committee members are hopefully a little bit valuing a little bit more than they have been in past years. The Aggies would be first in that metric over the other 2, and that's something that I think a lot of people, externally, and certainly the SEC has been pushing to more heavily evaluate your strength of schedule and those teams that you do play. And it seems like, based on at least these initial set of rankings, this is going to be a committee that is still evaluating eye test. And obviously, this is not a season that is complete by any means. They do not have the full resume for any of these teams, but that is something that it seems like they are focused on in terms of the eye test versus over maybe concerning the full resume. So going to be interesting to see on that one. Let's see if we can find any other questions out there. Looks like there's a little bit of chatter there in the chat about kind of the SEC's positioning, and look, that's going to sort itself out. And I think it's going to be probably more interesting, looking at this team or this set of rankings in particular, looking ahead to next week and how things could change. Obviously, the committee values Georgia pretty highly right now. All right, well, what happens if they end up losing to Texas? Obviously, that's going to keep the Longhorns into the committee's rankings there. But how far could possibly Georgia drop? How would that kind of change things in terms of Ole Miss being that third highest SEC team? Could they possibly get punished because they did lose to Georgia? Where would probably Oregon would probably be the greatest beneficiary of that in terms of sliding up there, and certainly having a case if they do win out with wins over USC and wins over Washington. So going to be a very interesting final close to this with the rankings. And if you do want a reminder, if you do want more chatter, as we will have on Thursday with my regular compatriots on the Others Receiving Votes podcast, be sure to like and subscribe and wherever you can find your podcast, whether it be on YouTube, whether it be Spotify, Apple, whatever it might be, your podcast platform of choice. Be sure to like and subscribe. We're gunning for the MMQB guys for sure in terms of our numbers and everybody listening. And I think we're building a pretty good, not only a good podcast, but a great product that you guys can hopefully enjoy as you're out and consuming college football content. So be sure to check that out. Let's see if we can see any more comments out there. Looks like there's going to be a couple of questions about certainly the Big Ten, possibly getting multiple teams into the playoff beyond your usuals in terms of Ohio State, Indiana, which are on that collision course in the Big Ten to make it to the Big Ten championship game. Oregon sitting out there. I think they're obviously in a great spot if they win out. I think a 10-2 Oregon, maybe a little bit more questionable right now, given that closeness between them and Notre Dame right now. How they're only 2 spots ahead of Texas. If Texas were to win out, you could maybe even see a case if they were to end up beating Georgia this weekend and then Texas A&M to end the season there in Austin. You could probably even make a case if you're looking just stacking resumes right now. To even include Texas ahead of Oregon, which would certainly change some of the math there, depending on who else might win or lose in terms of hosting some of those first-round playoff games. So a lot to be decided still in a season. I think this really enhances kind of that everything going on in college football with some of these marquee matchups that we have, not only coming up this week, but coming up next week as well. So if there are any other questions, we're happy to take them. See if we can see a few more, and if not, we'll jump out of here. Got one question. Putting Miami is dumb considering they are not atop the ACC standing. I agree. I think that's the one thing in terms of trying to take this top 25 and applying it to the bracket, and that probably is the biggest thing for everybody to kind of keep in mind is, right now Miami is the highest ranked ACC team, but that does not mean they are getting that automatic qualifier. They would almost have to be an at-large when you consider a lot of the tiebreakers. It could be Duke right now. It could be Virginia. It could be a Louisville. It could be Pitt, which really kind of has their destiny in their hands as well. Even if they were to lose this weekend to Notre Dame, Pat Narduzzi, the head coach there of the Panthers, even kind of addressed it a little bit in terms of saying, hey, I'll get run out of the building. I'll lose 100-1 as long as we can win those games and make it to Charlotte. And certainly an interesting thing for a coach to say going into a big game like this. But it's true. They are undefeated since going to their freshman quarterback, Mason Heinschel. So there's a lot going for the Panthers. I think the fact that they are stuck right down there at number 22, at least gives them a shot and gives them certainly some hope that if they do end up running the table, even losing to Notre Dame, they will be in there with the playoff and earning that automatic qualifier over some of those teams and those scenarios that we talked about earlier in terms of maybe James Madison possibly getting up there. I think it is notable that South Florida, that's kind of probably the consensus selection there to make it to the college football playoff out of the American as that champion. But if you look at the AP poll this weekend in particular, James Madison checked in at 24, USF at 25. So committee viewing things a little bit differently, probably more on the eye test, given the impressive nature that South Florida's have. Obviously, they have that win over Florida early in the season. They got that in the swamp there. They've got a win over North Texas, which only has one loss and is also a threat to come out of the American. Tulane is circling as well. They've got 2 Power 4 wins, including over Duke, which would be a little bit interesting too. In terms of at least seeding, possibly if Duke were to somehow win the ACC with a couple losses, even though one of them could be to Tulane, which could end up winning the American. So you could see possibly a Duke team getting sent to whoever is that 5 seed, which is more likely than not going to be an SEC team at this point, whether it be Georgia, whether it be Ole Miss, whether it be potentially the SEC championship game loser, whether that's Alabama or Texas A&M, especially if Texas Tech keeps winning. So I think it looks like that's most of the questions that we've gotten in the stream. Be sure to tune in. We're going to keep doing this every Tuesday until Selection Sunday. Pat Forty, my partner in crime, will certainly be back for next week and in future weeks. So a little bit more banter between him and me in terms of some of these rankings, and there will certainly be plenty to discuss on the podcast this week. Be sure to check out Others Receiving Votes wherever you get it. And be sure to like and rate and review and give us 5 stars when you can, because that helps others find it. We'd love to build a pretty thriving community with the podcast, and we think you'll certainly enjoy the banner and at least the picks on my end. Maybe not so much from Gino and Pat this week, but we will get into that on Thursday when we do release the podcast. So I am Bryan Fischer, Sports Illustrated. If there's anything else, be sure to check out si.com for a new column for me tonight, and plenty more to come around this committee's top 25 and where we go from here in college football. Should be a great weekend for everybody, and we will catch you down the road.